Well, the game over the next couple of months, watching all these Saw movies, will I keep my sanity? I suppose the choice is mine. Roll the sick intro.
Hello. You don't know me, but I know you. I want to play a game. There is only one key to open the device. It's in the stomach of your dead cellmate. You better hurry up. Live or die. Make your choice.
Hello, everyone. My name is Ryan Cam, and welcome to my road to Saw 10. This is going to be the series where I'm going to be covering every Saw film from the Book of Saw in honor of Saw 10 coming in September 29th. Now, I've covered both Saw 1 and 2 as part of Scary Mania in 2021 and 2022, respectively. However, I wanted to rewatch those and watch all of the films after them, regardless of the quality, because I do genuinely really enjoy both Saw 1 and 2, and I wanted to watch the rest of them. So this is going to be that series, and I will be having guests for this one, and going to be announcing those as they come along. But it's time to jump in by talking about the one that started it all, 2004's Saw. But before I jump into it, I want to throw it to my guest for this review, my podcast partner at the Life in the Movies podcast, Jacob Martin. The same Jacob Martin who is going to school to become a preacher. Yes, he electively chose to watch a Saw movie. I admire the bravery. Jacob, take it away.
Don't believe Adam's lies.
What's going on, Ryan? Thank you for inviting me back on your channel once again outside of the Life in the Movies podcast to talk about a movie that I've never seen before in the road to the upcoming Saw movie, Saw 10. Man, I can't believe there's 10 of those movies. That's weird. I'm talking about the original Saw, released in 2004. This is the first time I have seen the film. What's funny is I've actually seen one movie in the Saw franchise prior to the original. I actually saw the Spiral spin-off movie that came out in 2021, just as movie theaters were starting to open back up again after COVID. And I mainly went and saw it to support the theaters. I enjoyed that movie fine. I like the police detective angle, creative premise. With some of the kills and stuff. But the characters, aside from Chris Rock, I don't remember much about. And definitely not a great movie by any means. But as a theatrical experience, it was a load of fun seeing the angle of like the death traps and the premise of that on the big screen, I guess. But I was interested in the original Saw, even though I've never seen it. I heard of its infamous reputation, like this was like the movie that spawned the term torture porn, which I think gives the movie a disservice, but I'll talk about that in a minute. What's fascinating about Saw is that this movie launched the careers of two people that you might be familiar with in the horror genre. James Wan, who directed this movie. This was James Wan's directing debut. James Wan's gone on to direct horror movies that a lot of people love that's come out since then, such as Insidious and The Conjuring, and he's seen as one of the top horror directors working today. You also have Leigh Whannell, who wrote the screenplay for this movie, even plays one of the main characters in this film. Leigh Whannell, he started out as a screenwriter, but he is started to direct in his own right. He directed the film Upgrade, which was more of an action film, But as far as horror goes, he directed the 2020 version of The Invisible Man, which I thought was fantastic, and I dare say better than the original Invisible Man. That might be an unpopular opinion. So you got two people who got their start on the original Saw and have gone on to do other things because of the success of this movie. So that right there tells you the quality of the original Saw. I'm sure Ryan's already summed up the plot of this movie. I thought the film, all things considered, I actually had a real good time with this movie. I thought it was a great horror film. It's actually, I dare say it, I'd rank this among one of the best horror films I've ever seen, if I'm being honest. I did not think I would say that. I came in thinking this was going to be a mid-tier horror movie, but I actually got a lot out of this movie. I think Saw is a fantastic horror movie. And I think it's better than what it's given credit for, because people give it the label of torture porn, and I think it gives the movie a disservice, because there's more to Saw than just, oh, people get trapped in death traps by Jigsaw, and there's a lot of gore. Yes, there's gore in the movie, but that's not the focus of the movie. The focus of the movie, you have two men who are trapped in a room, chained to different objects, and they're struggling to survive. And we later find out more about Jigsaw and everything like that. But the core of this film is a survival story. The film is also a mystery, as we also see, kind of like what Spiral did to much more effect. We have this storyline where you see a little bit of a police investigation of what's going on with the Jigsaw Killer. It's led by Danny Glover's character in the film, and it's cool seeing him in Saw. I did not know Danny Glover was in the original Saw movie, and I thought that was pretty cool. And you got that, and you learn about the backstories of the two main characters who are trapped in the room. The character Adam, played by Leigh Whannell, and especially the doctor character, played by Carrie Elways. You got all that. The movie builds more of suspense in its storytelling, more so than anything else. It's not like a full-blown gore fest like I had thought the movie would be. I think some of the later Saw movies were more so on the gore than anything else than storytelling, and that's probably why the franchise is so infamous. But the first movie, at least, it's all about the characters. It's all about the storytelling. It's these two guys trapped in a room trying to escape as best they can and not trying to fall under the manipulation of Jigsaw. To me, that's more intense than, just schlocky gore. Like I said, there is gore in the movie, but that's not the main focus of the movie, and some of the more intense aspects gore-wise is either implied or off camera, especially for those who are sensitive to that type of stuff. But I really enjoyed this. I definitely saw some influences from other directors when watching this. Alfred Hitchcock, with just the level of suspense and dread throughout the course of the story, and then just the griminess of how this movie looked. I felt like harking back to some of David Fincher's movies as well. So I like that James Wan, Leigh Whannell took influences from other great directors who do horror and thrillers and put it into their movie. So I got to give the movie credit for that. Jigsaw, very creepy dude. I like the design of Jigsaw the character, and you learn more about what the motivation of Jigsaw is actually very unsettling. And I don't know if I'd say he's like a top tier slasher character compared to like Freddy Krueger or Ghostface or Michael Myers, but Jigsaw still that definitely leaves his mark in this movie, and I enjoyed the mystery of the Jigsaw Killer, which is, to me, the most fascinating thing about this movie. There's actually some really strong performances in here. I didn't know Leigh Whannell did acting work. He plays the Adam character. He does a really good job. I'd say, I think he gets overshadowed by some of the other actors in this movie, but I still enjoyed his performance and learning more about his character. And I'd say the best performance in this movie is easily Carrie Elways as the doctor. I think he gave a fantastic performance. I know Carrie Elways has been in quite a few different movies over the years. People know him best as the Prince character in The Princess Bride. He was Robin Hood and Robin Hood Men in Tights. He was even recently in the newest Mission Impossible movie. So he's still around, still giving good performances. But I didn't know Carrie Elways had that in him as far as acting, as far as delivering a very complex character, very intense layers in his performance. He definitely went out there in this movie. And I gotta give him credit for that. Carrie Elways did a fantastic job, and he easily gave the best performance in this movie. Danny Glover was really good. I enjoyed the Jigsaw character and where that led to. The film had some really good twists and turns. The final twist in this movie, which I'm not gonna spoil in case you've not seen this film, the final twist was absolutely crazy. Like, I would not have guessed where the movie was going to go in like the final minutes of the movie, but let's just say this final twist like reframes the entire movie, and honestly all for the better. I would not have guessed that. Let's just put it that way. I enjoyed the twist of this movie, and it shook me to my core, and that's what I want in a movie dealing with twists and turns, if it's executed that well. All in all, Scream is a great movie. I enjoyed it far more than I thought I would. I enjoyed the premise with the Jigsaw Killer. The survival aspect of the main story I thought was great. There's two characters that, they have their faults. They're very complex. I would dare say both of them are very unlikable at times. But they're written well to where you get invested in where they're at, and you at least want to see them try to figure out how to get out of this situation alive, and that's the core of what made the movie work. The mystery with Jigsaw was great. I enjoyed the minimal direction from James Wan and Lee Winnell's writing. It's a very well-crafted movie with great twists and turns and a final twist that takes the movie home and leaves it in a way that makes the film completely unforgettable. I actually really dug this movie. Definitely, if I had to do a ranking of top tier horror movies, I didn't think Saw would be up there, but I think Saw would be up there. It's up there with Nightmare on Elm Street, The Shining, and the original Halloween. Another horror classic for sure. I ended up giving Saw a 5 out of 5 stars. That's a bit crazy, but I actually thought this was an awesome movie. And on my 100-point scale, it's getting a 96 out of 100. Thank you, Ryan, once again for inviting me on your channel to talk about Saw. I hope you enjoy going through the remainder of this franchise. I'm not sure if I'll get into the franchise as much as you. I'll at least maybe, I've heard 2 or 3's not that bad, but the other films I've heard are either okay to hot garbage, so I don't know about those movies. I'm not sure about this Saw 10. I read the premise and where it's set chronologically, and I'm kind of intrigued after seeing this first movie, if it's set between the events of 1 and 2, so maybe I'll watch that one next, I don't know. But I'm sure Ryan's going to leave a link in the description below where you can check out my YouTube channel. I'm also the co-host on the Life in the Movies podcast every week, every Wednesday. Ryan, I won't hog up too much of your time. I'm curious to hear your thoughts on the original Saw movie. Hope you all have a good day. Ryan, back to your thoughts on Saw.
Jacob's channel is linked in the description. Go give him a subscribe there. The original Saw is so unique in that it basically started off a whole new subgenre, the torture genre or the torture porn genre. However, the more I come back to the original Saw, the more I realize that calling this movie torture porn is kind of not disconcerting, but rather condescending. Because honestly, despite the fact that it is literally called Saw, and this is literally the poster, and the fact that there is a scene in which Cary Elwes saws his own ankle off, this is honestly one of the more compelling mysteries I've ever seen in a movie. And I feel like that is a bit of a disservice to call the movie just traps or torture porn. I feel like it just dismisses the movie as lesser than. From what I understand about the later films, it does devolve more into that, but I will go down that path when I get there, or I will cross that bridge when I get there. As for what I know about the original Saw, the more I go back to it, the more I enjoy it, the more better things that I find, and how relatively simple this movie is. The movie only had about a $1 to $1.2 million budget, and it grossed over 100 million. That is like a studio's dream right there. In my research, I found that Leigh Whannell and James Wan basically funded the movie almost themselves. It was made for pretty much no money. But for the fact that they had no money, they made it look like the budget was twice what it was. Now, those two names, Leigh Whannell, James Wan, are two names that you all are probably very familiar with. Jacob mentioned it in his portion of the review. But Leigh Whannell would go on to father the Insidious movies and would direct the Invisible Man remake from 2020, which, due to the whole vid thing that was going on, I'm sure you all heard about that little phenomenon. It remains one of my favorite movies of 2020. It is such a good movie, and I feel like it doesn't get talked about nearly enough these days. And James Wan, I mean, we all know what he's been up to. He's basically become one of Blumhouse's go-tos. He basically created the Conjuring universe and has had his hand in some very successful films. This movie launched the careers of Whannell and Wan, and I almost forgot to mention that Leigh Whannell also directed Upgrade, a severely underrated sci-fi movie that everybody should watch if you have not. The movie's not just simple in its budget, but it's simple in its story. It's simple on the face of it, but it's also complex. It's simple in the sense that the main crux of the movie is just these two individuals, Dr. Lawrence Gordon, played by Cary Elwes, and simply known as Adam, played by Leigh Whannell. They're chained in this, I'm going to call it bathroom, having no idea of where they are or how they got there. All that we do know, and we learn later on in the film, is that they both have done some very sus things. And the person that has put them there is pretty much putting them there for a very good reason. There are no saints in the Book of Saw. Like I mentioned, the two big actors in the movie that we do see are Cary Elwes and Leigh Whannell, who wrote the screenplay for this. Cary Elwes is probably best known for playing Wesley in the awesome movie The Princess Bride. However, he's had a long and lengthy career before and after that, and he really goes against type in this one. You know, in Princess Bride, he was the rogue. He was Wesley. He was the dude who could talk the talk and walk the walk. He had the immunization to iocane powder and the whole nine. Here, he's the opposite of that. He is the overworked and overstressed surgeon who doesn't neglect his family on purpose, but kind of neglects his family and is, well, getting some sexual healing from someone who is not his wife. So yeah, no saint. Same thing with Adam. His backstory is a little more vague, but he basically is Jessica Jones, seemingly without the alcoholism. So again, these two are not to be admired, but the movie does a really good job of grounding you in this situation, keeping you there, and making you feel really sorry for these two, and hoping that they get out. And the more you go down the rabbit hole of this movie, you realize that it is not as simple as this person put them there because they're a psycho. There is more to it than that, and the twists and turns are all very well realized in such a way that it's like everything just falls into its right place, and it's a beautiful mosaic. There is more than one person who could conceivably be the Jigsaw Killer in this movie, and with hindsight, we all know who the Jigsaw Killer is. John Kramer, played by Tobin Bell. He is basically the main monster in this entire series. We all know that now. However, back in 2004, we didn't know. So the Jigsaw Killer could have literally been anyone. It could have been Dr. Gordon or Adam, for all we know, and they're just doing it just to troll the other person. It could have been the police detective, the disgraced police detective Tapp, played by Danny Glover. It could have been anyone. And the movie does a great job of laying out these little breadcrumbs of there's a good reason why they would make the jump and be pure evil that is Jigsaw. With a movie like Saw, yes, there is definitely, and like I said, what I talked about with torture porn, there is definitely some scenes of torture here, but the movie does a really good job, and I think it's mostly budgetary reasons, but the movie does such a good job of showing it, but not showing it. We see the aftermath of certain instances. For example, about 15 minutes into the movie, we basically see what the Jigsaw killer does to his victims. You see the guy tangled up in the razor wire. We see the gentleman looking for the thing in the safe, but he is drenched in a flammable substance, and the only thing that he can use to open the safe is to read the code off of a wall with a single candle, and any drop of the candle could just set him ablaze. The iconic scene where we meet Amanda, played by Shawnee Smith, where she has the reverse bear trap in her mouth, and that whole thing. Basically, the movie does a good job of showing the torture, but also not showing it. It's very creative in that regard, giving enough to being like, okay, yeah, it's definitely near the knuckle, definitely earning its R rating, but not being like, not glorifying it, if that makes any sense at all. I feel like any Saw review at this point in time can't be complete without talking about the twist. So, spoiler warning, just mute your computer until this point, and I'll put a time code in the lower third. But mute your computer now if you don't want to know. Basically, as it turns out, the Jigsaw killer we know is John Kramer. Basically, he is a patient of Dr. Gordon. He has terminal lung cancer, or a terminal brain tumor, that basically means that he is not long for this world. And so in order to kind of show people how they have mistreated their blessings in life, he's going to take them away and force them to realize what blessings that they have through very devastating ways. And the entire time that both Dr. Gordon and Adam are in this room, there is a dead body in the middle of the floor, except the body is not dead. It's Kramer with some stuff on his face, and basically one of them is going to be his first test subject, and it turns out to be Adam. And one of the legit creepiest endings to a horror movie I think I've ever seen. It's where Adam is chained to this pipe. He can't go anywhere. Where Kramer gets up, he peels the stuff off of his face, and Adam's like, "You son of a," and he reaches out to try and grab Adam, and Kramer just electrocutes him because there's an electric charge to the chain. He walks out, he turns around, the music's starting to kick up, the classic Saw theme, the dun, 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 dun. And then he turns, he grabs the door, and he's like, "Game over." And then he shuts the door, and you see Adam just go, "No!" And what makes it even crazier is that as the end credits roll, you hear Adam screaming. It gets slower and slower, not slower, but it gets quieter and quieter as the music kicks on. But just seeing Adam's face, and then you just hear the scream as the credits roll, it's legitimately creepy stuff. I'm giving this movie an amazing grade. It's honestly a fantastic horror movie. It's a modern classic at this point. The movie is approaching 20 years old. Crazy to think about, but there you go. But it is, at this point, a modern classic, considering who all stars in it, who is the writing team, who is the directing team. At this point, calling it a classic is just a must. It's a classic of the horror genre. But what did you all think of the original Saw? Let me know in the comments. I'd love to read what you have to say. And stay tuned for next Friday, where I will be covering the just as good sequel, Saw 2. But if you liked the video, leave a like and subscribe to the channel. Click the bell to allow notifications, so when a new video drops, you'll be the first to know about it. My name is Ryan Cam, and I'll see you in the next one.